Vypadá to bude krásné.
Hello and welcome. My name is Teresa from the blog and YouTube channel freetoflower.com, where I share all about our simple living on our European farm, homesteading how-tos, and recipes from scratch. Please hit the subscribe button below to never miss a new video. Today, I want to talk to you about a question that I get asked really often, which is it better living in Europe than in the US? And specifically, what are the differences between living on a farm in Europe versus farm in the US? Now, I will preface this by saying I have never lived on a full-out farm in the United States. I was born here in the Czech Republic, but I have spent almost a decade living in the US with my husband in various different states. So we lived in New York City, in Manhattan, in Brooklyn. We also lived in Texas, then we lived in a very rural area in Arkansas. So we did get a cross section of the different lifestyles, if you will. But all I know about farm living in the United States is A, friends of mine who farm in the US, B, a lot of the resources that we consume, YouTube videos, how-tos, all of those are all based in the US. And then C is just what I know, I don't know, from living there for 10 years to be true. So some of those things are from personal experience, but a lot of those are just what I've learned, heard, and etc. Before I jump in, here is our horse getting a dental appointment. We've had all the horses see the dentist this past week. They all had a little bit of work done, especially our older mares, like the one that you're seeing right here. I know this looks kind of strange if you've never seen this before, but this is a really important procedure that we do twice per year. It ensures that our horses are able to chew their food properly and digest all the nutrients. We've actually neglected it with one of our horses one year, and she suddenly lost a tremendous amount of weight and was not doing well at all. We couldn't figure it out until we found out that actually her dental appointment was overdue. All right, back to the regular programming. Let's talk about the differences between living on a farm in Europe versus the US. So first thing I would say, and that kind of brings it back to the dentist appointment, is that services are cheaper. What I see people paying for different services around their farm, like the vet, the dentist, any kind of work that they need done, is a lot cheaper here in Europe. Now, one of the reasons for that is that services in general are cheaper here, but sometimes, funnily enough, goods are not. But we will get into that a little bit later. This is a major perk. You can get services for really pretty cheap, or you can also barter and trade, which I know you can do anywhere. But what I love about the area where we live is this is part of the culture. So you do something for me and I do something for you is extremely common practice and is done all the time. So you go help with, let's say, fishing out a pond, which is a very common thing here in the fall. And then the same guys will come and help you when you're building something like in your field or you need something done that requires more people. The next huge thing, that is usually the thing that I always say is the number one perk of farming in Europe versus farming in the US, are the distances you have to drive. What I absolutely adore about our little village and where we're situated is that we are less than 2 hours away from 3 major European capital cities. We can hop in a car and in 2 hours or less, we can be in 3 different countries and be in 3 different major European cities with airports and obviously all the entertainment, restaurants, you name it. 2 hours is nothing. Now it's slightly different for Europeans, but me coming from an American standpoint on driving distances, you know, my husband and I, we once drove from Texas to California in an electric car, actually. That's a story for another day. But that was a 3.5 day drive or so. So to me, 2 hours is a really short distance, and I love that. If we're ever sick of the farm and we don't have that much work going on, we can hop in the car and we can go and spend a weekend or a week or whatever we want in Vienna, let's say. And I think that this is so unique to European living and by far my favorite part about it. Piggybacking off of that is public transportation. We live in a small village, but even though it's a small village, it has so many amenities. Number one being public transportation, public bus that comes here from the larger town 3 to 4 times a day and is super easy to hop on, super safe, clean, all those things. My husband takes it all the time, and I'm really excited for when our kids are older and they can just hop on the bus themselves and go to town if they want to and then come back. That's something that I did growing up, and I love that the area is safe enough and that this is part of the culture enough here that kids are able to do that when they reach a certain age. Some other things that our village includes is we have a small store. We have the equivalent of an Amazon locker, but it's for any vendor. So when you buy something online, 90% of places will offer that they will deliver it to this locker and you pay less for shipping and you can just pick it up in 2 days' time. So shipping is so fast. We also have a school and a kindergarten here in the village, and we also have a milk dispenser, which I love. I just came back from there this morning. Whenever we're not milking our cow, or if we need more milk than our cow gives, we can just hop over there anytime and get fresh milk from local cows that are kept here in the village. Now, I need to check the exact number of inhabitants, but I am almost certain it is under 400. So a small place. And yet we can find so many things here. We also have a lot of cultural events happening. There are live music events. There are cultural heritage events, celebrating various different things in the Czech calendar where the whole village comes together. We recently had a fair for kids where some of the people who live here made different attractions and things for the kids to ride, and we had some outsiders come in and bring some of their services, and we had a coffee stand and all sorts of different things. So I really love the communal living aspect of where we live. I don't know if it's like that everywhere else. All I can speak about, obviously, is what I know and where we live. And community is my next point. My family has owned this property for about 50 years, which actually for this area is really not that long. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but in some ways we are still not fully accepted as local, which is crazy. They still sometimes call us the city people, especially when we didn't live here full time. When I was growing up, we lived in the city and then we would come here every weekend and holidays, which once again, this is something that's part of Czech culture. Almost every family has a little cottage or a house that they go to on the weekends to get away from city life. If they're city dwellers, of course. And especially back then, we were always called the city folk, and people weren't rude to us, but we were not one of them. And we've been now living here full time for a couple years, and I still feel like we're not fully accepted into the community, but it is getting better all the time. And one of the things that I love is, for example, my kids have friends like the neighbors' kids, but all over the village, really, we have other families that we're friendly with, and somebody will put something on, like an event, a birthday party or something else, and everybody will come together, and then maybe that family needs help with something a few weeks or months later, and so then everybody's going to come together. All right, interrupting this just to point out that this watermelon is from our garden. This is the first year that I was able to grow a watermelon, and it was delicious. We only had 3 and they were all tiny, and the other 2 are actually not that great, but this one was amazing. My kids loved it, and I was so proud that we are in zone 7A, I believe, the equivalent of zone 7A, and I wasn't even sure if it would be possible to grow watermelon, but it was. And speaking of food, that is another major point, a perk of living in Europe, is that overall the food quality is better. There are just stricter regulations on food. We do not have to watch out quite as much. We always try to obviously raise as much of our own food as possible, grow as much of it, and then we buy organic from small scale farmers as much as we can. But whenever that is not an option, let's say we just need to dip into a grocery store to pick up a few things, I am not as paranoid about the ingredients and everything as I was when we lived in the US, because the really harmful things are, for the most part, not allowed to be in food here. Now, there are obviously exceptions to this, different kind of preservatives and dyes, those things still exist, but we don't buy those things. So, the worst thing that we will buy at the grocery store are things like lunch meat or cheese. Maybe we will occasionally buy beef or meat that is not raised organically, but once again, antibiotic use in those animals here is extremely regulated, so that's one thing less that I need to worry about. Speaking of food, you guys have heard me mention many times on my channel that I'm working on a fall soups video, like a giant roundup of the best Czech fall soups. I'm making one of them right here. As you can see, this is one of my favorites. This is Czech Leek soup with potatoes and bone broth. It's delicious, creamy, but mostly it's just so easy and fast to make. I will link the recipe in the description box below. I have it up on my blog. And also, super exciting news, my fall soups video is ready and it will be going out next week. So make sure you hit the subscribe button down below so that you get notified when I push it out. I just have to record the voiceover and do a few more last touches, but it's gonna be amazing. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Soups are the best thing in the Czech cuisine, at least in my humble opinion, and the thing that I missed the most when I lived abroad. I lived in France, in the UK, in the US, and all of those soups just never came close. This was really the main thing that I missed about home. And so I think that they are something not to gloss over. Moreover, the ingredients are super simple, so you can actually make them anywhere. There's nothing special Czech that you need to buy in order to make those. So make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss that video when it comes out. So there are obviously drawbacks to farming and living in Europe as well. We miss some of our friends and family that live in the US, and there are certain things that are not available here or that we are just behind on. One of those things, for example, is an automatic turkey door that my husband and I were looking for, but in general, those are far in between, and whenever we discuss if we would move somewhere else, we always come to the same conclusion that we're just so happy here.